Let's bring in Andy McCarthy, former U.S. Assistant Attorney and a Fox News contributor. What have you been able to determine from what we've learned so far, Andy?
Well, Sandra, I can't think of a good reason for a state prosecutor to be meeting with political officials. I should point out that there's nothing at all unusual about prosecutors from the state or the federal government meeting with their counterparts, meeting with prosecutors from other jurisdictions. That sort of thing happens all the time. It famously happens in the context of turf battles between offices fighting for high-profile cases. But even when things are working as they're supposed to work, people should be cooperative with each other if they are in investigations that have mutual interest. And yet you kind of have to do that to investigate in an organized way. But you always want to avoid the appearance that politics is driving law enforcement decisions. And I just can't, for the life of me, imagine a good reason why a state prosecutor would meet with White House officials. You could totally understand the meeting with Justice Department officials to sort out the competing federal and state interests. But White House officials, that seems very peculiar. And it seems even more peculiar to me that that meeting that he testified about, and not surprisingly, I guess, had amnesia about, happens to have happened on the very same day when Attorney General Garland appointed Jack Smith as special counsel to take over the federal election interference case.
You mentioned amnesia because there was multiple occasions in the transcript we've learned where he says, I do not remember. I'll get to that in just a moment. But as far as the transcript that was released from Wade, which we know obviously happened because of a subpoena, he did say that Willis was preparing to prosecute Trump even before she took office, and that she put Wade on a search committee to find a prosecutor, which ultimately chose him for the job, Andy. This was the portion of the transcript that was very revealing about what you just mentioned. When presented with invoices for billing White House meetings, Wade said he could not recall. So question one, turning back to invoice number 8, we're working off the line that says travel to Athens, conference with White House counsel. Do you remember meeting with the White House counsel in May of 2022? I don't, said Wade. Do you have any recollection of meeting with anyone from the White House counsel's office? I don't. How could he have so easily forgotten something so important just 2 years ago?
I'm not sure that he's forgotten so much as he doesn't want to remember. You know, there's a reason why the judge in Georgia, Judge McAfee, when he disqualified Wade, I think he should also have disqualified Fani Willis, but that's a different story. But there's a reason why the judge concluded that their testimony left an odor of mendacity in the courtroom. And I think he kind of may have brought that odor of mendacity with him to Jim Jordan's hearing room for his deposition. The explanations or the failure to recall doesn't make any sense. And look, any prosecutor who's handled a high-profile case where you have to meet with top-level federal officials, particularly if it's a peculiar meeting with political officials, if I was in a meeting like that, I could virtually give you a transcript of what happened in it. So the idea that he can't recall after sitting there for 8 hours, that's peculiar.
He also said this, though, in that transcript, it's revealed, Andy, about pressure to file charges against Donald Trump. He was asked, and did anyone in the White House direct you or, to your knowledge, anyone else at the Fulton County District Attorney's Office to file charges against Donald Trump? Wade responded, no, ma'am. Also, another bit of information coming from all of this is that Nathan Wade apparently admitted that he needed this special training, RICO training, Racketeer Influenced and Corruption Organization Act training. I believe it is what it is called, Andy, to lead this Georgia case against Trump. What does all of this reveal to you, Andy?
Well, I think it underscores that he had no business being on a complex criminal case. I did RICO cases for a number of years as a federal prosecutor. It's a very complicated statute. In some ways, it was a very innovative statute when Congress enacted it in 1971. Georgia is prosecuting Trump under its analog for it. But I think the fair inference from this, Sandra, is that he wasn't brought in because he was the senior, experienced hand who could, sort of calm things in a very high-profile, intensive prosecution. He was brought in because he was Fani Willis's boyfriend, and the fair inference for all of this is that some of the allegations that have been made by defense counsel about self-dealing and potential financial fraud and perjury are very colorable.
Andy, a lot to be learned there. Thank you very much. Always appreciate when you can join us.
Thanks, Sandra.
All right, John.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.